I am sending this Congress a plan that you should pass right away. It's called the American Jobs Act. There should be nothing controversial about this piece of legislation. Everything in here is the kind of proposal that's been supported by both Democrats and Republicans.
Well, he wants to pass it now, but pay for it later, much later. So will Congress go for it? Let's ask representatives from both sides of the aisle. We have Carolyn Maloney, who is a Democrat from New York, and Adam Kinzinger. He is a Republican from Illinois. Thank you both for being here. And Carolyn Maloney, I don't want to sandbag you with something that you're unprepared for. On the other hand, we do have these reports of a credible but unconfirmed report of a terror threat. Hasn't been labeled specifically as an official terror threat yet, but we're awaiting a press conference from Mayor Mike Bloomberg from New York. We will broadcast that as soon as it happens. Do you know anything about this?
Well, I know only what I've heard from you and others that are reporting a very credible threat, and it's a deep concern to every American. Ray Kelly, the police commissioner, told me that there have been 7 different attempts to attack New York since 9/11. They've all been stopped because of the increased intelligence and security that we put in place. But of course, this is a top concern from the Homeland Security Department, which was created after 9/11, and the national intelligence and protective agencies that are involved. And we are all want to be there to help the mayor and help the city in any way we can. Regretfully, this is the world we live in. A terrorist only has to be right once or slip through once, and we have to have this barrier out there, which we're trying to build every day. We've done a remarkable job in making America safer, but it is a threat. It's one that we all feel, and one that we need to address with the utmost concern and action.
All right. And as soon as we have more information, we will bring that to our viewers live. Congressman Kinzinger, the president came out with a pretty ambitious plan tonight, even more so than we had heard in advance. Well over $400 billion. As I mentioned, it may be closer to $500 billion in costs. He says it's all paid for. Apparently, he's going to be throwing it to the super committee in Congress to figure out where to get the cuts to pay for it. But when have you ever heard Congress spend money and say, we'll pay for it later on, and they really do?
Every time Congress talks. You know, look, this is what we're seeing again. I went into the speech, and I leave this speech saying, if we can find areas where we can all agree, let's move forward. But if the requirement is this has to be a comprehensive package, then this was written to be a campaign speech. Look, this basically spends all the money today and says, yeah, in 10 years we'll cut it. I've already heard people, my friends on the other side of the aisle say, we can't find $1.5 trillion in cuts. And so now we're adding $400 billion onto that. And so now it's going to lead to one of two things. We're going to have to increase taxes, or we're ultimately not going to be able to come to those cuts, and we're going to have to go into that sequester mode. I mean, look, I can say, hey, I have an $8 trillion stimulus plan, but I'm going to make the super committee pay for it, but it's paid for.
All right. And Congresswoman, the question is what we are paying for as well. Now, the president did say he's got all kinds of mechanisms to prevent fraud and everything. But we just had today the FBI raid the offices of Solyndra. Solyndra was the poster child for stimulus dollars, $530 million, almost a $500 million worth of stimulus dollars. It went bankrupt this week. They had to fire 1,100 workers. Presumably, these are workers that still are touted as part of the success of the stimulus plan. But it wasn't a success. How do we prevent money from going down a sinkhole?
Well, we have oversight to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. But in certain areas, such as infrastructure repairment, it's very, very hard to have abuse in those areas. It's very straightforward and transparent. And he called to create jobs, and we have a jobs crisis. Dave, we have 14 million Americans, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that are out of work, and only 3 million jobs. So if miraculously we hired 3 million people and fill those jobs overnight, there's still 11 million Americans out of work.
Well, what happened to the multiplier effect? We were told by you and others that, you know, if we spent all this money creating jobs, the government created, we'd have this multiplier effect and we get unemployment rate down. That hasn't happened.
Well, the stimulus did work. We were shedding 700,000 jobs the last 2 months that former President Bush was in office. And because of the stimulus and because of other actions which he wants to continue, of giving tax breaks to companies that hire unemployed workers, to cut the payroll taxes of small businesses. This will help workers and businesses.
But it hasn't changed. I mean, forgive me, Congresswoman, but it hasn't changed the unemployment rate, and that's what people are looking at. People are still out of work and desperate, and there hasn't been the follow-through. Congressman Kinzinger, I just have to ask you very quickly, maybe one note of agreement between Democrats and Republicans is to lower the corporate tax rate and get rid of a lot of the fancy deductions. Is that something everybody can agree on?
Oh, I think so. You had bipartisan standing ovation to that. I think the the 3 pending trade agreements are things many of us can agree on. There are notes of agreement, but look, again, the president promised unemployment would not go above 8% if we pass the stimulus. It hasn't gone below 8% since then. So I know what I was promised and I know what was delivered. So let's look at this plan in details. I really want to see something in writing because I haven't seen anything in writing yet. Really in 8 months, so it'll be interesting.
We have to leave it at that. Thank you very much, Carolyn Maloney.
But at least the Democrats have a plan. Where's the Republican plan?
Yeah, well, we want to see specifics of the president still hasn't said specifically how he's going to pay for this. He's going to come out with another speech in a week and a half. Perhaps he'll have more details then. Carolyn Maloney, Adam Kinzinger, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks
a lot.
Dave.
Union boss Richard Trump.